What's up, guys? Dr. Seth back here to help solve your powerlifter problems. This one is going to be a big one because we're going to hit hip pain, we're going to hit squat depth, we're going to hit knees caving in, all on the same topic. And that is my absolute hatred, I guess hate is a strong word, for the Q knees out. The reason I don't like the Q knees out is because it's not a great cue for a lot of raw lifters, in my opinion. Because if we're having trouble with knees coming back in, first thing we gotta think about is the further we shove the knees out, they're gonna have to come back in at some point. And if we're shoving them out too far beyond where we need to go to hit depth, to create torque, to create tension, they're just gonna have to crash back in, because if we're shoving them out too far, we're not going to be able to create torque, we're not going to be able to hit depth, we're not going to be able to create tension, and they will have to crash in order for us to stand back up out of the hole. And that is going to be emphasized by, if we are really accelerating, if we're shoving our knees out, we're just going to be pushing them out really into nothing but our own tissue tension, but our own joints, and there's really nothing to create torque against other than ourselves. And the big problem with going over knees out, over externally rotating, we're going to be putting our glutes in a very short position relative to the degree of hip flexion. We're going to be putting our adductors in a very long position. And a big reason why a lot of lifters do have knee cave after they shove knees out is because the length tension relationship at the glutes and adductors doesn't end up being very good for actually generating hip tension. If the adductors are super long, there's not a lot of overlap in the muscle, they can't produce a lot of force, so we'll have to have the knees come back in so the adductors can contribute to hip extension. It's not that the knees are coming in because the glutes are weak, it's more so the knees are coming in to give the adductors a chance to help the glutes out in the very bottom of the squat. And that's why you'll see a lot of lifters, their knees come in, their squats get faster, because they're giving themselves better leverage for the musculature that they have so they can stand up. Now, on the flip side, part of the solution might be like, yeah, we could strengthen adductors so that they do have better leverage so they can drive out and the knees can't stay out. But I'd say it's a way, way, way simpler solution to just not shove your knees out too far, and then we'll be able to stand up without having that cave and that crash. And if we think about like a multiply squat where I'm a fan of knees out, it's because in multiply, the stance is going to be wider so that if we want knees to track over the feet, we do need to shove knees out to keep them out there. And on the other part of multiply that's different from raw, we have multiple plies of material over our body that our goal is to get as much out of as we can. And if we want to get pounds out of those plies, what we need to do is we need to stretch those plies out. We need to stretch those layers of fabric out so that they capture force, so they capture elastic energy, and then they spring back to throw us back up to the top. Now, the panel that does a shit ton on a multiply squat is that crotch panel, is your taint panel, is that piece of fabric underneath your ball sack. If we can open the legs up harder, spread that out more, it will help push us back up to the top. And that's why multiply, I'm totally okay with that. But as a raw lifter, if we're just kind of spreading out into our adductors and then taking away from adductors' ability to produce force, that is not helping us out at all in the slightest. And one of the arguments for shoving knees out, for creating external rotation, is that we are going to be creating torque at the hip. And it's like, yes, by externally rotating, yes, we will be creating external rotation torque at that hip. But if we're torquing against nothing but our own tension, we're going to be limited in how much torque we can create by how much torque we can kind of create the opposite direction. What I would rather see lifters do than trying to create external at the hip is to think about spreading the floor, not necessarily pulling the knees in, but just spreading the floor from the feet, and that is going to create internal rotation at the hip. And because we're torquing against the floor, which is an immovable object, we're going to be essentially unlimited in how much torque we can create, because all we're doing is we're just spreading into it. The glute medius, glute min are going to be working super hard to create that spread. The glute med, glute min working hard to create that internal spread will prevent the knees from crashing in. There will be some roll in, but it's not going to be a crash in. And with that roll in, it will let us load into our adductors phenomenally. It will lengthen the glutes a little bit more, and it's going to put us in a really, 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 really good leverage position to stand up from the bottom of our squat. The other super cool thing about letting that little bit of roll in happen is that if you think about, thumb is femur head, hand is femur, pelvis is my knockoff can of Canadian Diet Sprite. what's going on here is that if we're going external, the pelvis will have to raise relative to the femur. If we're creating internal, letting the femurs roll in just a little bit, the pelvis will drop relative to the femur, which can make it easier for us to hit depth. And yes, I get the argument that part of knees out is that we're creating space for the torso to fall through. But if we're over-externally rotating, raising the pelvis, we're hurting ourselves in that regard. If we think about spreading the floor, let the knees come out as we're spreading the feet, that's going to let the pelvis roll between the femurs. That is going to let us hit depth easier. Now, a lot of times if I have someone with weird wonky hip pain and I see their squat and it's just a bunch of trying to shove knees out, super externally rotated, all I have to do to tell them to fix that is to try to spread from the feet, let the femurs roll in, bang, bang, boom, their hip pain is magically gone. And if we look at a lot of really good raw squatters, we can see this technique in action. Like Eric Lillibridge is my favorite example of this. You can just kind of watch as he hits the hole. His knees don't come in, but his femurs do roll in. The knees stay out. He loads into that internal. He comes out. One of the best squatters ever in history, in my opinion. My favorite squatter to watch. And he does that absolutely beautiful. So take a look at that if you're looking for a reference in what I'm talking about. And again, this isn't me saying that I want to see knees coming in. This isn't me saying that I want to see knees touching. This isn't me saying that I'm totally fine with knee valgus in every single circumstance. I am pretty okay with knee valgus, but I don't want that to be your goal when you are squatting. I like knees to be relatively stable. I don't want a lot of weird travel. And I think that a much better strategy than just shoving them out into nothing will be to create torque at the floor, let the knees track where they belong, let our nervous system, our internal mechanics, everything take control and put things where it needs to be to optimize position, and things are going to work out pretty damn okay. I don't think about my knees when I'm squatting. I don't want any of my lifters thinking about shoving their knees out when they're squatting. I just want them thinking about the floor, spreading it, creating torque, and then letting the knee do its thing. All right, guys. Hopefully that changed your thoughts on knees out. Hopefully that helps out your squat. Hopefully that helps out your squat in the future. Thank you so much for watching. Drop a comment below. Share this with your friends and be on the lookout as we roll out more and more programs on the Activated Performance app. I have one rehab program out in there now. I'm dropping 3 more later today after I get those demos done. So check that thing out. I'm going to try to build that thing out to be as good as it can be, to give you guys as much resources as you need to fix your own problems. And added bonus, signing up for the app, we're going to have a Discord group where the app members have access to it. We're going to have form checks, we're going to have questions, we're going to have bullshit channels. It's going to be a good time, so make sure to check out the app, hop on there. And if you sign up now, I will be super appreciative, because there's not a lot on there now, but there will be in the next couple of months. Once you sign up, you have access to it as long as your subscription is going. So check that thing out. Thank you for watching, guys. Have a great rest of your day.